This is it. The secret that's been buried for years is finally out. Chrissy Lampkin leaked video is all over the internet. And trust me, it's more than just a scandal. It's the explosive truth no one saw coming. But that's not even the startling part. And what if I told you Cameron, the very same we all know and love, is secretly related to everything that's going wrong with Jim Jones and Chrissy? You've seen the headlines, but you're still missing the broader picture Mom D is about to disclose. This isn't just a leaked film, it's the missing piece of the puzzle that's been kept under wraps for years. Forget everything you thought you knew. The true drama begins right here, and trust me, once this is released, no one will be able to look at Chrissy, Jim Jones, or Cameron the same way again. When Mama D revealed Chrissy Lampkin leaked video, the world erupted into an uproar over what was previously assumed to be just another celebrity controversy. The world swiftly transformed into a sequence of disclosures that would disrupt the basis of both Chrissy Lampkin and Jim Jones' relationship and maybe their entire careers. But what was even more surprising than the video itself was the role that Cameron performed behind the scenes, one that had stayed concealed for years, manipulating the situation for his own profit. So let's set the picture. Chrissy Lampkin and Jim Jones, both renowned characters in the rap scene, had been a couple for years, and their relationship was frequently on display for the public, from the reality show Love and Hip Hop to their countless social media posts. It always seemed like they had a beautiful relationship full of love drama and the sort of lifestyle everyone envied. But behind the surface, things were considerably more. Enter Mama D, who was well renowned for being loud, provocative, and never one to shy away from stating the truth no matter the cost. When she revealed Chrissy's leaked tape, everyone was immediately intrigued. But what most didn't understand that Mama D wasn't simply releasing a piece of private tape. She was drawing the curtain back on a deeply established conspiracy involving Chrissy, Jim Jones, and none other than Cameron, the rapper and business magnate who appeared to be invincible in the streets of Harlem. Mama D's disclosure wasn't just about the scandalous film. She wasn't disclosing just some humiliating material that Chrissy had intended to keep hidden. Mama D had unearthed a complicated network of power, manipulation, and treachery that had been going on for years. What many assumed was a random slip-up was actually part of a much broader and more nefarious goal, and the impetus for all of this was none other than Cameron. What was Cameron's involvement in all of this? That's where the real drama begins. While most people knew Cameron as Jim Jones's faithful friend, the truth of their connection was much more difficult. Cameron wasn't simply a background character in the narrative of Jim Jones and Chrissy's drama. He was far more engaged than anybody could have anticipated. Cameron had been pulling the strings behind the scenes for a long time, but he wasn't doing it for the sake of friendship or even because for business reasons. Cameron had his own agenda. He was establishing himself as a puppet master, making sure that both Jim Jones and Chrissy were naively playing into his hands. The most astonishing aspect was that they didn't even realize they were part of his game. Mama D's bombshell disclosure concerning Cameron's influence began to put light on something that was frequently disregarded in the public eye. While everyone knew Cameron and Jim Jones had been close for years, no one understood the depths of their connection or how far it ran. In Mama D's tale indicated that while Cameron and Jim had worked musically and professionally, Cameron had a role in altering Jim's personal relationships, including his long-standing partner Chrissy. This wasn't just about dominating scenarios for personal advantage. No, this was about creating a situation where Cameron could assert his authority without anyone knowing it. Mama D discovered that Cameron was arranging events, pulling strings in the background, making sure that Chrissy and Jim Jones were constantly simply a step away from the upheaval he produced. Cameron wasn't simply a bystander in their drama. He was stirring the pot, ensuring that he had leverage in both Jim Jones and Chrissy's life. How did this all tie to the leaked video? Of the iceberg, Mother D said that this video wasn't a random leak, but rather part of a premeditated strategy to make sure that the persons involved were exposed at the correct moment. Cameron knew that Chrissy had a history of public meltdowns, and he noticed Mad's insights didn't stop there. She also pointed out that Cameron had a long history of influencing Jim Jones' judgments, and this influence stretched far beyond merely music or business. It was alleged that Cameron had been heavily involved in developing Jim's relationship with Chrissy, ensuring Jim's Mama D made it plain that Cameron wasn't simply a buddy, but a power player who deliberately crafted a narrative in which he had influence over every element of Jim's life. For Chrissy, Mama D made it plain that Chrissy had no idea what was really going on. She had no concept that her relationship with Jim had been twisted for years by someone she believed was a friend. The video that became public wasn't simply a moment of embarrassment, was the key to unlocking a chain of events that Chrissy was entirely ignorant of. She was merely a piece in a much broader game that had been in play for much too long. And then there was Jim Jones stuck in the thick of all of this. Jim had always been renowned for being devoted to his people, but Mama D's revelations hinted that Jim's loyalty had been used against him. The truth about Cameron's involvement in Jim's personal life revealed a side of Jim that no one had ever seen before. Was Jim truly the one making the decisions in his life, or was he just following the script that Cameron had written for him? What made this all so stunning was that everyone felt they knew the actors in this drama. Fans believed that Jim and Chrissy's ups and downs, just part of their reality TV identity, but Mad's disclosures were about to destroy that illusion. Behind every tear and every disagreement, there was a tremendous force at work manipulating events to ensure that Jim and Chrissy's relationship would never be secure. The release of Chrissy's video was only the beginning. Mama D's expose was drawing back the curtain on a much darker and more convoluted tale that had been meticulously disguised for years, and Cameron was at the center of it all, pulling the strings to ensure that everyone stayed in their position as he organized his own version of events. This wasn't just about a video leak. It was a warning, a cry for everyone to pay attention to the actual drama behind the scenes. The truth was out now, and Chrissy and Jim's relationship was only one piece of the jigsaw. The actual story was about the influence of one man, Cameron, who had been pulling the strings all along. And Mama D, she was the one courageous enough to reveal it all. As Mama D's bombshell revelations continued to unravel, the world couldn't get enough to leak the video of Chrissy Lampkin, her connection with Jim Jones, and Cameron's concealed control over their lives was more than just a scandal. It was a labyrinth of deception, manipulation, and power maneuvers that stretched years. People were beginning to understand that this wasn't merely celebrity drama, it was a deeply established narrative of control, treachery, and horrifying truths, all of which had been kept under covers for far too long. The tape had been intentionally released, but she had also constructed a picture of a far broader conspiracy involving all three primary characters, Chrissy, Jim, and Cameron. What made this case so complicated wasn't only the personal betrayal, but how it had been Mama D said that Jim Jones, despite his tough guy demeanor, was a puppet, fully oblivious that his life and relationship were being influenced by someone he considered a brother. Cameron, the narrative of how Cameron pushed himself into Jim's personal life began to surface. It wasn't just about business or music. Cameron's influence went much beyond that. For years, Jim had been under the erroneous assumption that his allegiance to Cameron was mutual. He never questioned the way Cameron operated in the background, gently changing his life without Jim even recognizing it. The real sting was the way Cameron had positioned himself as the guardian of Jim's interests, controlling Jim's turbulent relationships. Relationship with Chrissy by playing the role of a trusted friend while covertly manipulating the strings. But what was Cameron's ultimate goal? Why had he spent so much time developing this convoluted facade? Mama D had her thoughts as the discoveries began to come out. It became evident that Cameron wasn't simply using Jim as a pawn in his game. He was establishing a situation in which he could always be the person Jim looked to for counsel, protection, and emotional support, while Jim was inadvertently distancing himself from the one person who Chrissy had been his strongest ally. What made this betrayal even more terrible for Jim was that it wasn't just about business, it was about trust. Jim had trusted Cameron with his life, and Cameron had used that confidence to progressively undermine his relationship with Chrissy. Mama D's insider knowledge indicated that on multiple instances, Cameron had gently pushed himself into talks between Jim and Chrissy, sowing seeds of doubt and uncertainty. This wasn't just about being there for Jim, it was about manipulating the narrative to make sure Chrissy was always the one at fault whenever things went wrong in their relationship. As the tale continued to unravel, the public began to doubt the genuine nature of Jim and Chrissy's relationship. As the couple's public show of love and passion began to appear more like a sham, Chrissy, who had been under constant scrutiny for her outbursts and her fiery nature, was now regarded in a different light. Had Howie truly been the villain in this scenario, or was she merely a woman who had been caught in the middle of a much wider power battle? It was becoming increasingly evident that Chrissy was the victim here, caught between Cameron's manipulative strings and Jim's allegiance to a buddy who had in fact been arranging his demise. But Mama D wasn't the only one with a tale to tell. As the scandal gained momentum, additional insiders began coming forward, shedding light on the true nature of Jim and Cameron's relationship. One unnamed source who claimed to have been close to both men for years provided alarming facts about how Cameron had controlled Jim's personal and professional decisions. According to this source, Cameron had purposefully caused a breach between Jim and his longtime partner. Chrissy gained greater power over Jim's decisions by generating tension and uncertainty in Jim's relationship. Cameron was able to maintain Jim in a perpetual condition of neediness, where he would rely on Cameron more and more for emotional and professional direction. A source also claimed that Cameron had been utilizing Jim's fragility as a strategy to stay relevant in the rap scene. As Jim's career took off, Cameron's presence in his life grew increasingly crucial. But it wasn't only about business dealings or collaborations. Cameron had his own goal. He wanted to guarantee that Jim stayed faithful, always turning to him for advice, even at the sacrifice of his own happiness and relationships. The fact was, Jim was locked in a loop of manipulation that he hadn't even noticed. But while the world was riveted on the drama, those closest to Jim and Chrissy were grieving. The formerly rock-solid connection between Jim and Chrissy was suddenly unraveling under the weight of allegations, emotional upheaval, and public scrutiny. It wasn't just about a leaked film anymore. It was about a broken relationship, a secret conspiracy, and the cold, hard truth about how Cameron had played a much bigger role than anybody ever realized. As new revelations surfaced, people began to question the entire foundation. Jim Jones's career, was it truly his own brilliance and perseverance that had propelled him to the top, or had Cameron been silently tugging the strings the entire time? Mama D had stated that Cameron's influence had been so widespread that even Jim's professional choices, Cameron appeared to have a role in every aspect of Jim's life, whether it was picking who to collaborate with, what artistic direction to follow, or even how to handle his public image. What was even more concerning was the expanding. Cameron realized that he had been using Jim to establish his own power in the business. This wasn't only about keeping Jim under his control emotionally, but also about guaranteeing his own financial and professional survival by placing himself as Jim's confidant. Cameron had been able to establish a tight contact with some of the top figures in the company, utilizing Jim's influence to ensure his own relevance. This also explained why Cameron had so frequently injected himself into Jim and Chrissy's personal problems, ensuring that Jim would never stray too far from him emotionally or professionally. Cameron's control over Jim was so intense that it spilled into their personal lives, affecting Jim's relationship with Chrissy and eventually causing holes in there for Chrissy. The discoveries were a painful pill to swallow. She had always known that her relationship with Jim had been filled with ups and downs, but the thought that Cameron was behind so much of their turmoil hit her hard. Chrissy had always been a strong woman, feisty, passionate, and protective of her relationship, but now knowing that the person she had trusted to stay by Jim's side had been the one to break them apart, she couldn't help but feel betrayed. She felt that Cameron had manipulated and twisted her love for Jim. Incessant interference, and it wasn't only about the emotional toll, but also about the public humiliation that Chrissy had been subjected to. The leaked video, which had initially seemed like just another piece of celebrity gossip, now felt like a weapon that had the fact was that Chrissy had been waging a losing battle the entire time. Every time she attempted to speak up for herself or defend her relationship, it felt like Cameron was always there, putting seeds of doubt in Jim's mind, making sure that Chrissy was always the one who looked terrible in public. The leaked film was only a little piece of the picture, but it had served as the fatal blow to a relationship Chrissy, who had already been working for years to keep her relationship intact, now had to face with the knowledge that her partner had been under the spell of someone who didn't have her best interests at heart, as the world had witnessed her at a vulnerable moment, and now she had to find out how to rebuild her life from the debris that Cameron had left behind. But the tale didn't end there. As the repercussions from Mad's expose continued, other personalities began to emerge, divulging even more about the underlying relationships between Jim, Chrissy, and Cameron. One source close to the incident said that Jim had sought to approach Cameron about his interfering in his personal life numerous times, but each time Cameron had successfully dodged the charges, making Jim feel like he was overreacting or being paranoid. Cameron knew just how to play Jim. He exploited their history together, their shared achievement, and their brotherly relationship. Linked to keep him in check. As more stories came to light, it became clear that Jim was beginning to see the truth for what it was, but it was almost too late. Jim had spent so much time defending Cameron's actions, thinking that the tie was so strong that he couldn't imagine how far the betrayal went. But now that everything was out in the open, it was evident that the damage had been done, and Jim and Chrissy's relationship may never be the same again. For Mama D, about revealing the truth, it was about educating people to understand the manipulation and control that often went unreported in the celebrity world. Mama D's involvement in the narrative was far from ended, while others were pointing fingers at Chrissy or blaming Jim for the disaster of their connection. Mama D had made it clear that there was one person who needed to be held accountable: Cameron. He had planned the entire incident, and Mama D's expose was just the beginning of his unraveling. As the story began to spread, the public's impression of Cameron began to alter. The popular rapper and businessman, who had previously been perceived as a self-made entrepreneur, was now starting to appear more like a puppet master who had been pulling strings from the shadows. His carefully built image as a streetwise strong persona was now being replaced by one of a schemer and a manipulator. Cameron's role in this tale would permanently impact how the public perceived him. By the time the dust had settled, Jim and Chrissy's relationship had gone through an irreversible transformation. Whether they would ever be able to recover from this was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they had been betrayed in the most personal way possible by someone they had once called family. As the final revelations came to light, knew the story was far from over. What had began as a leaked video had now turned into a full-scale exposure of friendship, devotion, and betrayal, one that would leave a lifelong effect on the world of hip-hop. The narrative didn't end there. The drama of Cameron, Jim Jones, and Chrissy Lampkin was far from completed. It was a story that would continue to unfold with each new revelation, twist, and betrayal. But what would happen next? Would Cameron's grip on Jim be broken once and for all? Would Chrissy find a way to heal from the damage caused by the man who appeared to be pulling all the strings in her relationship? The answers were yet to come, but one thing was certain: the world would be watching. And there you have it, folks, the jaw-dropping reality behind Chrissy Lampkin, leaked video, Cameron's hidden part in Jim Jones's drama, and the devastating treachery that has shocked the hip-hop community to its core. What began as a leaked video has now exposed a complex web of manipulation, dedication, and heartbreak that no one could have predicted. But the question remains: will Jim and Chrissy be able to rebuild their fractured relationship, or is this the final chapter of their story? And what about Cameron? Will he face the consequences of his actions, or will his wow remain hidden in the shadows? This tale isn't ended yet, and as usual, we'll be here to bring you the newest developments, unique insights, and stunning turns as they unfold. So make sure you're subscribed and press that notification bell so you don't miss every phase of this explosive tale. We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Mama D's bombshell revelations? Do you feel Cameron was pulling that the threads behind the scenes have always dropped? Share your opinions in the comments section below. Let's get this conversation started. You found the video as disturbing as we did. I made sure to share it with you. Make friends and spread the news about secrets are being revealed in the realm of hip-hop. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Stay tuned for more dramatic revelations. This isn't the last time you will hear about this tale, believe us. The drama is just getting started.